Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wetzel, and I am here with the beautiful Jules Arnes. Hi, Jules.
Hi, Lisa. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this topic today, and today we're going to talk about why the world feels like it's changing so quickly, and it feels like we are on fast forward. It's been the craziest thing. Not only is time moving so quickly, but we are shifting so quickly.
I agree. It's so funny when people are like, oh, time is speeding up. I just had this conversation with my daughter, and I was saying, is it or is it slowing down? And we're perceiving it as going fast. And she was like, well, how would you know? And I said, well, I guess it depends on how you experience time. Because for me, when I think of a week ago, it feels like a month ago. So is that speeding up or is it slowing down?
Yeah. Well, we're going to jump into that because I think it's a really big it's a really interesting or I'm saying big, it's a big topic, but it's interesting to talk about these perceptions because our timelines are getting short. I mean, it's like our perception of the past is getting shorter and we're not being able to look into the future the same way that we used to, and we're coming more in this present moment space. But that's not the only topic that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about the collective shift, that the perceptions, which we're just mentioning, and why so many people are waking up right now, which feels like holy cow, holy schmagoli is what I was going to say. But it's just amazing how fast we're evolving. It's amazing. So in your opinion, Jules, what's changing and why?
So for me, I think we all can agree that this year is a big year for a couple of different reasons. We ended last year in the nine, and this year we're kind of in this like opening where these particles are rearranging, and depending on how we choose to play in them and explore in them and evolve with them will be whether or not we land into a one or if we shift on a collective level into what I call the 11 and where we start breaking past cycles. Because if you think about going from one to nine, you're always in that loop of the beginning and an ending. But that's not what we were meant to experience. We were meant to experience this brand new energy where we are actually in co-creation with source, and that's what this year is all about. And so for me, I would say the particles of reality are aligning and supporting the evolution of not just our consciousness but also our body.
Hmm. So, what do you think about I'm trying to think about how to ask this question. Um, because we talk about this so much, it seems so redundant. Okay, so we're moving to a higher level of consciousness. We understand that. It's like, okay, we beat the dead horse. So to speak. you know, but let's really talk about what does that look like? So we understand that, okay, so I'm evolving. My physical body is shifting and changing. The way that my mind thinks is shifting and changing. The way that we perceive our reality is shifting and changing. So let's dig a little bit deeper into why. Okay, because I want to know your thoughts on why is this happening and why is it happening now?
I always struggle with the word why, and because it's does it matter why? I
No.
think it's more of like, it's like because then it's like the ego wants to create this story about why it's happening when I feel
Yeah.
like really where we're going to is what is it showing and what is my choice in the experience? And then just like what we were saying before, it's kind of like we're going into this place where even time is supporting us and staying more in the moment because the particles of our future are undefined for the first time, right? We
Mhm.
really can't, like, to project into the future, it's almost impossible. But also, for the first time, memory based on the past is not as defined, and that's why we're having this weird perception. So if you think about time and then you answer your question, it's like, what if it's just, what am I going to do with the experience that I'm in right now? And that we start to
Mhm.
choose. When we talk about higher consciousness, that's what it's about, is that we are in a higher state of awareness on how we're choosing to experience our life. And for the first time, we're so aware that we are making micro choices that are creating a new world.
I think that that is really important. And again, I love your answer because the why. Why is this happening? And again, that's our human mind. That's the 3D structure of the way that we've been conditioned to believe that you've got to figure out, you have to know why everything is happening and unfolding. But as you were talking, what I was seeing is a bunch of particles, and that that we're moving into this space of deprogramming our brain to not feel like we have to know all of the steps. We have to, and again, now I'm seeing like a math equation or a science formula, scientific formula. And again, times and places for everything, but as a whole, for where we are as humans, we are breaking down that construct of having to have everything in place. What I'm hearing is pre-planning,
Yeah.
the pre-planning, and the that expectation of how things should hold. And jumping into immediately, what I'm thinking about is like I'm seeing like going on a vacation. And, like if we go on a vacation, then we have certain expectations of how we're supposed to feel. And I'm going to be excited about this. And this is how my body's going to feel. And I'm excited to have this experience. And it's almost like we're subconsciously putting an idea or a expectation on how things are supposed to unfold. S- Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like that way of living, not even just based on, I think the vacation effect is definitely one that everybody can kind of connect to. But I think if we really step back, is how many times are we doing that in our just day-to-day life as well? And that is starting to break down.
Absolutely. Every single day. We have a plan,
Hmm.
for the things that we have to do, and all of the stuff. And so what I'm seeing, and what I think is what you're saying, is that as we start breaking down these thought patterns in our head of having so much control, that we have to kind of control everything that's happening and everything that's going to happen. When we start really looking at that, and I always see it like that's the linear timeline. Like us humans, we're on a linear timeline because this is how we've been programmed to believe. You're holding on to things that have happened in the past, and you're holding on to the idea of creating your future. We've been taught this, manifesting. You have to visualize what has to happen in the future, and you're holding on to something, a construct that you have an expectation about, or a desire, a want about how things should be and how things should unfold. And so it's taken us into this timeline. But as we're shifting and evolving and breaking our mind down, our little linear timeline is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that we're finding that the things, and the common thing of, this is the way that it was in the past, and I want to relive that.
Yeah.
I had this beautiful experience and I want to do it again. And so we're holding on to things in the past, or it could have been a bad situation, whatever it is, good, bad, whatever it is. But we're living in the past and in the future. And so what I'm seeing is that, as our brains are starting to deprogram, and we're letting go of these expectations and the attachments, then our timelines are getting cut off. And we're moving into this more of this present moment time, where our time is going up and down instead of out. We can't project so much into the future, and we're not holding on to the ideas and the expectations of what should be. And we're letting go of the past where we're not staying attached to what once was. And so when we're talking about how time is it speeding up or is it slowing down? Because if you start really thinking about it, as our timelines are getting shorter and shorter, we're getting more into the present moment. Then it's like, wow, it seems like, this has been a long experience, a long day. But wait a minute, how? And I'm saying that wrong. This day may have gone fast, and then you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, what day is it? How long has it been? And as I'm saying this, my mind is going back and forth. But I can tell it's like when I'm working today, like let's just take today, then today is going to feel like it's flowing like a normal day would. But then I look back and it's like, what is today? Today's Thursday. Oh my gosh, it was just Monday. What happened? But I feel like I'm very present here. And then the idea of looking into the future, it's like, wait a second, I can't even see that far ahead. Let me just make it through today and then we'll figure out. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't make plans, and we live in a 3D world, and, we have to follow schedules and calendars, and, if we work and have to follow work schedules and all of that. But our being in the present moment is shifting our perception of time in a way that's allowing us to act and react more in this moment.
Yeah. One thing, there was a couple things that came up as you were talking. So one thing that I have been, I guess, the information that's coming through, and that I've definitely been in the experience of when you were talking about that you're seeing kind of like an equation, and that is a big part of the shift that we're in, is that the particles of reality are releasing density. And
Mm-hmm.
of course it is, as we are going to move into it, we're moving into a completely different dimension, and that dimension has a different mechanics of reality. So if you think about like quantum mechanics is basically
Mm-hmm.
the measurement of our reality, and those mechanics are changing, and so that our perception of particles is also changing, and they're getting faster and lighter, and they're expanding. And so gravity of those particles is also releasing a little bit, and so we are going to experience that on a conscious level, and we're going to experience it in our perception of time. And I was thinking as you were talking about time, is that because these particles are shifting, and those particles are also shifting in our body, and they're
Yeah.
shifting in the narrow pathways, and we're having this experience of this upgrade and going to this place of like, why are so many people awakening and why is it happening so quickly? Well, a big part of it is this particle shift that we're in, and we are literally becoming something different, and the consciousness of this new design is going to break down our constructs of time and of our belief systems and how we're seeing reality. And people are going to have an organic awakening, because the actual frequency of our reality is raising. And so we are just organically kind of going along with that. And then there's going to be those of us that are have been waiting for this moment. Right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
we knew this was coming, and we've
Yeah.
been preparing for it. I mean, I can remember doing my first light body activation when I was 16, and I was like, I know this is what I'm here to experience. And we really are in it right now. Uh, so yeah, and one thing that you were saying about time of, how it's starting to kind of go up. And as you were saying that, uh, I was like, is it going up or is it becoming spherical? And then when I realized it's both,
Yeah.
right? Because our concept of something moving up is more of what we would call a shift, and we could call it,
Yeah.
some people call it timeline shifts, or the
Yes.
ability to even be in a now moment. And I think that that's the beauty of kind of taking out, like releasing the past and not being attached to the future, and moving into that beautiful moment of the now, is that we have the ability to really hone in on the frequency of what it is that we're experiencing. And because it's not on a linear timeline, we can go from one experience to the other. And this will be
Mhm.
something, just to kind of bring in a more advanced, uh, I guess you could say, concept, though I feel like we're really close to having this be, and I know for myself, I'm already experiencing it, is the ability to shift reality instantly because we are not in a linear time construct.
Mhm. Okay, that's let's talk about that. And what so okay, so when people are hearing you shift our reality, what does that mean to you?
It would be our experience, right? So if we're in an experience, well, I mean, let's just do something even really practical is, wow, this day is going too fast and I have a lot more to do. I need to have the experience of more time in my experience of time. And so I can shift into a timeline where time slows down and I'm able to get more done in what would normally take a really long time. I can do it with, say, in 15 minutes, where normally it would be an hour. And that's how we can start to realize that time truly is an illusion, right? But we can manipulate our experience and what we're able to do in what we would consider linear time as we shift it into what I would call spherical time, or I don't know, spiral time. What are we going to call
That's
it?
how, yeah, that's how I see it. You know, that's how I can explain it. Spherical is more, but I see it. It's like the time. It starts like in the center of me, and then it goes up and it goes down.
Yeah.
So that it's not. Again, it's not like just a dimensional thing, and it's not just going up. It's going throughout, if that makes any sense. But I see us like in a little. I'm hearing the word vacuum tube. I
Like a
don't know
beam
why.
me up Scotty tubes.
Yeah, but is it like you can beam me down or you can beam me up? And I'm also seeing it's like, this is this way of being able to maneuver and move through time in a very fluid way that we haven't been able to experience because we've been so dense and we've been so trapped in the idea that, what our mind holds, what we've been taught, and that we can't I mean, I'm going to say it how it's coming out. You may need to correct it, but it's like you can't experience what the mind can't conceive of. And so as you limit yourself and the thoughts and the ideas of this is the way that it works, this is how it is, and this is the construct, then you're limiting yourself in that energy field, in that timeline, or in that time frame. But the more that we can allow that idea, that construct, to break down, then the more the possibilities are aware to us, are made aware. We're made aware of.
Yeah.
And then it allows us to start shifting our energy frequency to move into whichever reality and whatever possibility that we desire. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to go back to that place where we can only experience the limitation of what of our minds.
Mhm.
And I'm even going to go as far as where we're ascending to, our mind will is not going to come with us, right? But at the same time, when we're asking to have the experience of our ascension, which a lot of us are, right? We don't even have to understand what it is, but we know something's happening and we're like, yep, bring it on. Activate my body, activate my life, activate my reality. And then we're still going to be in this limited state of consciousness because that's just where we are, right? But when we ask that, what I find is that there's an intelligence that starts to turn on in the body that starts to shift things without our consciousness being aware of it.
Yeah.
And so our consciousness is doing as much as it can, our awareness is doing as much as it can, but it's actually happening without our conscious awareness. And then what, for me, this is what my experience has been, and I've seen it for in a couple other people, is that it's almost like the body reorganizes, or reality reorganizes, and then all of a sudden consciousness hits that new reality, and it's like, oh, here I am. This is what I was asking for, but how did I get here? And it's because all of this was happening without the conscious awareness. And of course, consciousness is going to have the perception that it's co-creating in this energy, and it is, because it's observing what was happening in the shift in the limited way that it can. But I guess my point to all of that is that this is happening regardless, right? It's happening for everyone. And then when we go to this places like, why are so many people waking up? And then you could even look at it as like, well, why is everything getting so chaotic? And it's because we literally went from we're in two different, like, we shifted from this dense frequency. All these particles are realigning and starting to stabilize in this, what we call the fifth dimension, or the new earth. And so, depending on how aware we are and how willing we are to let go of attachments, is going to be our experience of that shift. And some people will continue to hold on and will have more of a chaotic experience and the deconstructing. And then there'll be those of us that are just like, yeah, let's go. And let's just start creating up here.
Yeah.
And just that awareness of what we're choosing is really where we're at now.
Yeah, and you mentioned two things that I think is really important, and because people make comments and talk about this a lot. First of all, you mentioned that we're moving into a place where we're leaving our mind behind, because we've been so conditioned to believe that, we have to function with our mind, because that's what society has created for us. And so you can't live without your mind. What are you talking about? And so explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, so I mean, even now, I mean, even if you just look at it with what we're aware of now, we're only using what they say, is it 5%, or it's a really 10% of our brain. So even if we conceive our mind as our brain, we're still only experiencing 10% of it. And another way you can look at it is that we're only using two strands of 12. So we have these other multidimensional strands of DNA that are holding the construct of our divine body, our multidimensional body, our quantum body, however you want to see it. Well, the same is going to be true for the mind. So if we're talking about the brain and how information is stored in the synapse responses and the neural pathways that are basically creating our reality, because our brain is telling us what is true within reality, and our brain is doing that through stored information. And then even if we kind of tap into what we would call the imagination part of our brain, it's still a limitation, because it's only running through the concept of those programming. So what I think what we're both trying to get at is that there is a state where consciousness moves from a state of identity, or going into observing information in order to be identified in what we're experiencing, who we are, what this is. All, I mean, how many times have we had a spiritual experience, and we're with our eyes shut, and it's all going on, and we're like, having a spiritual experience. Oh my gosh, right? We're like naming it as it's happening. All that part is going,
Yeah.
and consciousness is moving into this higher operating system where it is more connected into the unified field or source intelligence, where it's no longer identifying, it's experiencing. And that's when we are in that place of allowing and expansion and stillness.
And I think that I want you guys to listen to what's being said. Hear this. And because it's such a hard concept, because we are so programmed to believe that you have to think the way that we've been conditioned and taught. And it's scary to let go of the idea, well, what if I can't think anymore? And I think it's really important for people to understand that you're putting an idea on something you've never experienced. And so if you've never experienced it, then you're comparing it to the only thing that you know. And so by putting that fear of, I can't do that. I'm not willing to let go of the way that I already am because this is safe and secure. And what you're talking about doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not even fathomable about how this would happen. So that's not even a possibility. And so when you think in that limited way, then you're holding yourself, what I'm hearing is you're holding yourself prisoner. And this is the only construct. This is the only way that I can be. But it's again, it's open, being open to all the possibilities of being able to be open to, I'm going to move into something that I don't know. Oh my God. How cool is this? Instead of being fearful of, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to stay here. So when you're talking about this is available to everyone, because how many times have I heard, I don't know about you, but I have heard it said over and over and over again that this isn't open to everyone and that some
Mhm.
people are not moving forward. And now, with this being said, I do think this is happening in waves, and I think it's happening in waves for a very specific reason because it's part of, okay, so those that are excited about moving forward and are like, I'm jumping in with both feet, then the energy is reacting and we are integrating with it because we're willing to accept it and move forward. Where other people may not be fully aware of what's going on and still holding on to the old constructs, which is holding them back. However, those of us that are moving forward and are like, bring it on, I'm going to figure out how to maneuver through this, then we're here to be able to be the way showers. And then those that are fearful or are so stuck in a construct that they're not willing to look outside of that box, it's part of an evolution, and it is happening and it is going to happen. So that the idea that you were not selected, I think that breaks my heart when I hear people talk about, well, maybe I wasn't chosen, or my family members are going to be left behind. Can you address that?
Gosh, I'm getting chills because the immediate thing that I heard is nobody can tell you who you are, right? And so when I hear that, I immediately go in and say, what is true for me?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not about some people were selected and some people weren't. This is a personal choice. And if it's a choice that I would like to have this experience, then you're in it, right? Because what happens when we have awareness and then we
Mhm.
have choice, and it's the choice that starts to create those new particles, especially with this where we are right now. And even if you're in the early stages of awakening, this is what I'm going to say to that. You're probably going to be way ahead of the people that have been on this path for a really long time. And this is why, because you haven't been programmed to the experience of awakening should be like. And you get to experience it in this fresh, new, amazing frequency. So let that be, gosh, I mean, a gift, right? That you get to step into this new paradigm of awakening where it's easy and it's fun and it's exciting, and that we all get to experience our awakening in the way that we choose to.
Mm.
So I just want to celebrate it. Like, it's not about there's some people that are doing it and some people that aren't. Everybody is. It's just whether
Yeah.
or not they're aware.
Yeah, and that's the key. And because again, I'm leaving my family behind, or I don't want to, and all of that. But and the other thing, that I think that is really important, that we're shifting and changing, and you don't have to believe the way that you and I do. You don't have to believe in this mystical power. You don't have to understand that there's all these different dimensions and all that. You can just be an everyday person. And if you're everyday person that's living your everyday life, but you find that you're seeing situations a little bit differently. You're finding that your belief systems are not like they used to be. Maybe they're not as defined, or so specific. I'm not living my life the way that my parents taught me to live because it doesn't fit me anymore. Okay, well, if you really start looking at people living their everyday lives, they're still changing. They don't have to believe like you and I do, where we see different dimensions and we talk to people that don't have forms or things, not people, but talk to energy patterns that don't have a form. It doesn't mean that just because you don't think like you and I do or feel like you and I don't even know how to explain it without put us in a category. But the everyday person is shifting and changing as well. They don't have to fall into our way of living, our way of
Yeah.
thinking to not have this experience. And just because we are on this path of there are so much stuff that's outside of this earth. Okay, you and I've had the experiences to be able to understand that. But the average person that may have never experienced what you and I have, they're still shifting and changing, but they just may not know why or how in the way that you and I understand it. But all you've got to do is talk to the average person. Ask them how much has your belief systems changed in the last 12 months?
Yeah.
What do you believe today that you did, or what do you not believe today that you believed 12 months ago? How do you view people differently? How do you view circumstances differently? They're on their journey too.
Yeah.
They just may not be able to define it the same way that you and I do. And I think that that's a problem for people that are moving into our way of thinking, that they think that just because I'm aware of these multidimensional levels and everything that's here, if the person that's sitting next to me doesn't believe that, then they're not shifting. That is a false belief.
I agree. I feel like that's just, and that's also what I call the old paradigm, right?
Yeah.
All of the it's there's going to be the left behind, and I want to go back to just that quick statement that you said about, oh, I don't want to leave my family behind, or oh, I don't want to step into this path of awakening, or I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose all my money. I'm going to lose like I mean, we immediately so many people have that belief system, and for the first time, I mean, and this has definitely been going on for at least the last 5 years now, that is no longer true, right? It may have been true in the old paradigm, but we have been shifting into this new paradigm for quite a while, and we're really stabilized in it now. Let's just say it for what it is. So all those old belief systems don't fit. The old paradigm of healing and awakening, all of the kind of static, I would call it, isn't there anymore. And we can have that belief system and have that reality around it. But if we choose not to have the belief system, the reality that's not that is very available for us to have the experience of. And I just want to say, I am a mom, and my experience is that the more that I release all of what I feel like it should be, and I just stay in the experience, my connection with my girls has become more, it's
Yeah.
become soft and beautiful and undefined, and the connection is so pure and divine, right?
Yeah.
So the opposite is actually true, is
Yeah.
that all of the things that we think will become an interference or a place of, oh, they're this and I'm that. The opposite is true, because the more that we move into this place of awakening and ascension, the more unified we become.
Yeah. And I've noticed that and recognized that. And I think that again, we're putting a judgment on separation.
Mm.
It's like, okay, so I'm shifting and changing, so I'm separate than you that are staying in these old belief systems. When in actuality, everything is mixing and intertwining together. And again, it makes my action and reaction to the people around me differently. I'm not forcing or pushing my belief systems or my conditioning on a situation. It pulls you out to become more of the observer and being able to interact and see on a different level of vision, understanding, experience. And that does, it helps us to be softer It helps us to be more understanding. When you're working more from a intuitive state, you act and react differently, and not from the mind and the ego of, you got to do it my way, or whatever all of these things are. Something's wrong with you if you don't do it the way that I want you to do it, or whatever. And so it shifts relationships, in a way that we can't fully understand, because it's supposed to look a certain way.
Yeah. Also, I just will say one more thing about that topic is that as we kind of start to release these belief systems and the limitations, and sometimes it can be fascinating, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
like, gosh, I had no idea how much just believing that was creating limitation and density in my life. And we start to feel lighter. And what I say is that we become more authentic, we can become more transparent. But in that transparency, we also be just as we let go of these belief systems, we also can start to see maybe where we have made choices that weren't based on our organic truth, our divine truth, and that we start to navigate life a little bit differently. And in that, there may be that we create choices differently because we're more aware of what our true, but I don't want to even put the word beliefs in there anymore, our truth is. And I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because when we get to the place where we get to live in transparency and show up as who we are, regardless of how we think people are going to react, then everybody wins. It's
Yeah.
just true. I have this saying, if it is divinely right for you, it's divinely right for everyone.
Yep. Absolutely. So, we actually are using up our time, and we are going to continue this conversation in the next episode. So, I hope you guys join us again. And thank you, Jules, for all of your beautiful information. And again, thank you guys for watching and listening. And we will see you in the next episode.
Big hugs, everyone.